Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Geeks Not Nerds, the podcast. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Sarah.
Sarah, today, finally, we're taking care of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
And we've been trying to watch this for months and months.
Yeah, we've been having a hard time getting our schedules together to finally get this knocked out. It's tougher to do things like this when you have a kid at home. But now we're finally doing it, and luckily we're getting this out before Star Trek Into Darkness, which was something we really wanted to do. So, today you have the chance to watch Star Trek The Wrath of Khan with us. Kind of, sort of. And listen to us talk about it a little bit. So what we do with these podcast commentaries, if you've never listened to one before, is we watch the film while recording a podcast, which means that it is both a podcast and a commentary simultaneously. The most fun way to do this, of course, is to watch the film along with us. So if you have a copy of it, either on DVD or Blu-ray, or you can watch it even on Netflix, it's there now. You can, that's actually how we're doing it today, you can actually watch the movie with us, and you'll be able to see exactly what we're talking about. If you don't want to watch it with us and you want to just listen to this as a podcast, we'll do our level best to provide some context for what we happen to be talking about. But, of course, watching it with us is the most fun way. And if you want to go ahead right now and rig up however you want to watch it, get it to timestamp 0. Get it past all the menus and everything. And, of course, if you're not watching this with us, you probably want to make sure you've at least seen this film once, or there's really no point at all. And, Sarah, when was the last time you watched Wrath of Khan?
It's been a while, actually.
Me too, actually, yeah.
Maybe a year or two, I want to say.
I wonder if the last time I saw this wasn't that time that we played Star Trek Bingo.
You know, I think it was.
In our Star Trek Club, we did that with this.
I know I've seen Space Seed at least 2 or 3 times since the last time I watched Wrath of Khan.
Well, and of course we reviewed Space Seed not too long ago on Trek Spirits.
Yeah, because it's awesome.
So it'll be kind of fun actually to watch this, having just recently watched Space Seed.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun.
I don't usually do that.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, here we go. We're going to give you a commentary for Wrath of Khan. And everybody ready? Sarah, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Everybody, get your menus past get your DVD or whatever past the menus, get it to timestamp 0, and press play as soon as I say now. Ready? Now!
Hey, it's a mountain.
There's our Paramount logo.
So yeah, I actually saw this before I saw Space Seed. So I didn't...
You know, a lot of people have had that experience.
So I didn't realize that Khan actually happened in the original series, and when I found out, I wasn't really surprised because it seemed like everybody on screen had some experience with Khan, but that could have just been made up for the movie. I didn't know.
Oh, it could have been, sure. And I mean, like, he obviously he's got to have some reason to want revenge on Kirk, but they could have made that up as backstory. I mean, granted, naturally there's backstory in this film that we never had on screen before too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
With Carol Marcus and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and I always thought it was interesting that Kirk had a son, and I don't know, I don't think that they did as much with it as they could have, but I mean, in a way, since it was a movie thing, and they had to put it in the movies and continue the arc and finish the arc through the movies, there wasn't really as much as you could do, I think. I
agree with you. I think David Marcus could have been a really compelling character. I think that he's not totally worthless or like unsympathetic or uninteresting.
Yeah.
But I think that what you're saying, I think, is more Star Trek 3's fault than it is Star Trek 2. I think Wrath of Khan does exactly what it needs to with that character.
I think so too. But I guess we'll figure that out as we watch this.
I mean, I like where he gets at the end, and I like that he has a little bit of an arc with Kirk.
Yeah.
And they could have been totally standoffish through the whole thing, but then you get the end, and there's some redemption there for Kirk, and I like that. I like that Kirk in this movie. There's a little bit of kind of a consequence and a comeuppance for the fact that he was such a ladies' man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that they actually give him a consequence for that, because all through the original series, he seems to sleep around with just about everybody.
It was just a character quirk that we were all supposed to love and enjoy, and that works in that show.
Yeah.
That works for that action hero, kind of archetype.
But it is a nice, interesting thing to explore in the framework of a movie, and I think they did that pretty well. at least in 2. Certainly better than they did in TNG with Picard and his son that ended up not really being his son.
Yeah, absolutely. That's funny, because for a minute that looked like a riff on this.
Yeah.
And you're like, that doesn't work with Picard as well.
Not so much, because, yeah.
I want to say this is the first time that a lot of fans would have realized this was supposed to be the 23rd century.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I know that in the original series Bible, it was not defined as far as how far in the future it was. It could have been anywhere from 300 to 900 years in the future. We didn't know.
It's kind of neat that they give us a context there and they tell us exactly where it is. And I think that just that title at the beginning, in the 23rd century, is immediately helping to bring in a general audience that's never watched Star Trek before. They're giving us a context. It's kind of, and even just with this opening scene with Saavik and everything, Saavik is kind of our in. Mm-hmm. as the audience, you know, at least at the beginning of this with the Kobayashi Maru test, where she's having to kind of try out Star Trek.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice that they give an extra character, they add an extra character to the cast that Trekkies are introduced to in this movie, and then general audiences would be introduced to the rest of the characters through her as a new character.
I always saw this scene as the precursor to the TNG holodeck scenes where you're in a place and you don't know that it's a holodeck simulation, and then you get to the end and it says end program. It's that sort of thing. This is also a simulation, although a crude version before they have holodecks. And when you go into the movie and you see this, you're wondering. I mean, it's very difficult to look at this movie, having seen it as many times as we have, and this having the cultural resonance it has now, to walk into this and remind yourself that the first time you saw this, you didn't know this was a simulation.
Yeah.
You're like, who's this random young Vulcan chick that's ordering Spock around?
Yeah, sitting in the captain's chair. Where's Kirk? I thought he was done being an admiral.
And you might start to wonder after a while, if you're really thinking about it, about how well this all looks like it could turn into a riveting action scene. We've got 3 Klingon cruisers coming at us, but where's the rising music? There's something off about this.
Yeah.
And I think Nicholas Meyer right away does a really competent job of like giving his audience some credit and bringing us along and letting us guess at things.
Yeah, and you've got to love the exploding consoles.
Yeah, it's great. Do we have to have that?
Well, I guess it gives more suspense to the simulation.
I like the idea that Dr. McCoy is kind of excited about getting to act.
Yeah. And everyone dies.
Talks about his great death scene, and of course here, if I'm not reading into it too much, we are somewhat setting up Spock's death scene at the end, giving you just a little bit of foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Now, granted, everybody there kind of fake dies, but the fact that you see Spock die before Spock dies is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even think people went into this knowing somebody was going to die. But if you somehow had known that, or something, it might be, well, it could be McCoy, it could be Spock. And isn't it interesting, those choices? Because those two are there at the end.
Yeah. And Spock is no longer dead. I really liked Kirk's entrance there, where the doors open up and he's got the light behind him. He's almost in silhouette. He's a larger-than-life figure, and this movie knows it, and yet it's going to humanize him like nothing ever has before. Yeah. So his entrance is that, and then all through the rest of the movie, in fact, look at how the camera is always underneath him. Yeah. Shooting up at him. Mm-hmm. We're not even worthy of being on the same plane as Captain, because he's Captain Kirk. He's this big, giant, larger-than-life figure. He's going to get taken down a peg, this movie. Yeah. Yeah. And it would be interesting to look at, I've never thought about it like this before, to look at the shot composition and see how it changes throughout the film. Yeah, that would be interesting. Does the film start to rise a little bit on Kirk as there's more talk about age and about mistakes he's made, and about mortality?
and all that kind of stuff. By the way, already 10 minutes in, you can tell that I'm speaking about this film with a great amount of reverence. I don't know how not to.
Oh, yeah. This is certainly the best Star Trek film that's out there. And it's...
I love that he has an exit sign there. And by the way,
I never noticed that.
When Kirk walks in, he says, "Aren't you dead?" They are foreshadowing that. I'm not reading into that.
Yeah.
That's really fun.
Yeah. But yeah, this movie is certainly culturally significant as well, beyond Star Trek.
Well beyond Star Trek.
So.
I mean, considered science fiction canon by a lot of people, and again, it's so easily watchable on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you're listening to this, you probably have seen this, and therefore you've probably seen other Star Trek, but I always like to say, if you never watch anything else Star Trek, be sure and watch Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
Most people won't be disappointed, and it's an end unto itself. If you never watch any other Star Trek, you can get a lot out of this movie.
Yeah.
And I think it does such a good job of providing its own context that it can exist within itself.
Yeah, no, I think so.
Which is interesting because it's a sequel to an episode.
Yeah.
And it does a great job of existing within itself, and yet, you needed Space Seed to set it up. But then you didn't have to have Space Seed if somehow somebody had come up with this without it.
But I think Ricardo Montalban did such a great job, had such a great performance in the original series episode, that somebody actually thought to want to bring him back to the big screen.
Somebody thought we actually had this great towering figure with all this presence in one of our little episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put him in this giant movie.
Yeah. And he's fantastic in it.
I think it's a lot of fun to see Kirk being such a kind of history buff in this.
Uh-huh.
And Meyer talks a lot in his commentary and in other interviews I've seen with him about how he wanted to really give this movie kind of a nautical vibe. Mm-hmm. And again, I think that helps provide a context and bring in people that maybe aren't big science fiction buffs. There's some wonderful science fiction ideas in this movie, but there's also some transcendent ideas in this movie that you don't have to generally enjoy science fiction to get something out of this movie.
Oh, absolutely. Human themes like growing older, revenge.
And obviously, the nautical theme serves the Ahab thing.
Yes.
And you got to have a little bit of that. Not that there's as much of that in this as there is Paradise Lost, but I think that there's a number of different literary references in this film.
Oh yes, they pulled from a lot of different places.
And I don't think that they make most of them too incredibly in your face. There's quoting of things, but it works with the Paradise Lost thing because we actually see that book with Khan. He's got it, and so it makes a lot of sense that he's quoting from something that he loves, and he's almost reliving it in a way. But then with the whole like Captain Ahab thing, that's kind of just present. I don't think it's even really discussed.
Yeah.
It's just we've got this guy that's gonna kill his adversary at whatever cost, no matter what it is. He's gonna travel throughout the cosmos and find him, and then we've got all this nautical stuff that immediately evokes
Ahab without having to come right out and say Ahab's got to get his whale.
One of the things that some people I think maybe resisted a little bit when these movies first came out is, well, aren't these people too old to still be those young archetypes? Mm-hmm. So let's make a movie about that.
Yeah, exactly. And it comes off as very real, very humanizing for the characters, and it really rounds them out. And it gives you a real human story.
When I was a kid, we always called the Reliant the Chrysler. I thought it kind of looked like a car.
Oh, and that guy's gonna die.
All right, here comes Captain Terrell. This is a good performance here. It's fun to see a different captain. You hadn't seen a lot of captains in the original series outside of the Enterprise, and when you did, they were usually evil, and they had taken over planets and made them Earth-like from some random point of history. It's also nice to see a character serving on another starship. I mean, one of our main characters serving on another starship. It gives Chekhov something to do. He never got a lot of stories, and they actually do something with him in this movie. It's kind of nice.
Yeah.
And and also, it just makes sense. This would happen. You would sometimes...
You never would keep a whole crew together for 20 years or anything. People would get split off, they'd get promoted, they'd get reassigned. Stuff would happen, and it's very realistic.
I think it's interesting that we hear that we're getting all these details about what Genesis is and what it does without really understanding it yet. We don't really know what's going on. But it's interesting. I don't feel like we're in the dark so much as the movie is again giving the audience some credit. It will explain this stuff in its own time in a natural, organic way with characters who don't know about it yet. I feel the need to emphasize that because there are so many movies that I've seen, past and present, that they leave major things out and never tell you things you need to have, hoping that you'll never catch on to the fact that it just doesn't know what it's doing. And then other things it will kind of throw in your face. We want you to know this so that you think that we're doing a good job. And then those things are not presented in a natural way. They're given in expository dialogue by people to people who already understand it. None of that in this movie.
Yeah, no, it's nice. So far we know that ship's on a mission, and we've seen plenty of Starship missions before, and so we don't know that there's necessarily anything important or special about this one, but we know that it's a science experiment and that they need a planet with no life. So, I mean, we're given what's going on pretty much, or at least as much as we need to know. And I would not want to live there.
That's right. But again, they're not going to come out and actually say this is exactly what Genesis is in some, kind of obtuse way.
Yeah.
They're going to wait until somebody has to have it exposited to them because they just don't know.
Yeah.
McCoy needs somebody to explain it to him, and so then we get to know.
Right.
And then I never find myself going, oh God, why do we have to listen to? I mean, why are we listening to all this? There should have been maybe there should have been a crawl before the movie or something,
Yep.
And this movie could have cheated and done that, and it's kind of fun that it doesn't.
Yeah.
Nothing against the crawls in Star Wars. That's there for an entirely different reason.
Oh yeah, no, and
that's homaging sci-fi serials, and also there is sometimes episodes that didn't get made at the time that the film got made, and so they have to catch you up to speed. Yeah, that's a different thing.
Yeah, no, I generally think movie crawls are fun, but
they can be.
Yeah. So you think there's life on this planet if there's a landed shuttlecraft here?
There probably is. I'm not sure I would have entered that right away. I might have kind of scanned around it a little bit.
Yeah, something.
Do they have weapons? If they don't have weapons on them, I might have beamed back up to get weapons. As bad as the weather is on this planet, it's kind of impressive they were able to beam down. Yeah,
well, and they couldn't get very good readings for life forms. So it is surprising that they could get such a good transporter lock. Usually, and I guess I'm basing this on stuff that comes later, because so often Star Trek has to come up with some kind of a plot device so that it's difficult to beam down. Mm-hmm. And here's our first look at the Ceti eel. Yeah, don't get too close to that. Really knowing what it is. This movie does this a lot. It sets up stuff and then it pays it off. Yeah. It does what great fiction should do. Mm-hmm. And those are all the books that were referenced in this film. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, Moby Dick was there. Yes. Yep. And King Lear. That is a fun. Frame to freeze. Yeah. But yeah, this movie does what all good fiction is supposed to do, and that is whatever it shows you, mm-hmm. or in the case of prose, whatever it's explaining to you is something it's doing for a reason. It's going to serve the story. It's not just
Here's this elaborate set we constructed. Look how impressive our set is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of thing. I think it's also important to note that I think Captain Terrell might be the first black captain.
Yeah, you may be right.
I'm trying to remember if we had any in TOS. I don't think we did.
Yeah, I don't.
We had
think
Daystream.
so.
He was a scientist. He wasn't.
Yeah.
He wasn't a Starfleet officer.
Yep.
But
And creepy black gloves.
you got to have your creepy black gloves. When you see a scene like this, you don't even have to see his face yet. You know we're looking at the bad guy.
Yeah.
These are not the droids you're looking for.
Oh, he was looking like a bounty hunter there for a second.
And of course, now we get the classic screw up everybody likes to talk about.
Yeah. No, Chekhov was not there
Chekhov wasn't there.
when Khan last saw him.
Now, this would be
On board
okay.
the Enterprise.
This would be okay, of course, because remember, Chekhov wasn't there. Chekhov
Right.
wasn't added till the second season, so he wasn't even on the ship.
Yeah.
The only thing you could say is maybe he was on the ship, maybe he was a lesser crewman, and they promoted him, and then he was on the bridge, and we just never saw him before.
Yeah, true.
But if that were the case, he still would have had to be in the episode someplace, because Khan recognizes him. So if Chekhov were to say, I recognize Khan because, I know about the Enterprise logs, and
Yeah.
all my friends told me about this crazy
Fair
time that this
enough.
guy tried to take over the ship.
Yeah.
But he recognizes him and calls him by name.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. Also, what are the handles for, except just for Khan to pick one of these guys up? Why would you have a handle right in the front of your
Well, you know,
suit?
that could be for tying onto the ship if you need to go outside on the hull for any reason.
Maybe that is why that's there.
I
But
mean,
the
that's
real
just making-
reason
the real reason
is so that
is-
Ricardo Montalban can pick him up and prove his super strength. I think it's important to note that this movie does it subtly, but it will sometimes show that Khan has superior strength as well as a superior intellect.
Yes.
That was something that the TV show had a difficult time
And yeah,
showing
I was
you.
just gonna say.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think that didn't come out nearly as well in Space Seed. That Khan had superior strength, especially. We were told that, but in a fist fight between Khan and Captain Kirk, Khan should have just creamed him, and he really just didn't.
See, this is funny because Khan's like, I can't believe Chekhov never told his captain about the time that I was on the ship. I mean, like if the movie remembered that Chekhov wasn't there, his crewmates would have certainly done that.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that Khan is so fixated on the fact that Kirk has been promoted to admiral,
Yeah.
because he's out there getting promoted, having a career, and he's forgotten all about Khan.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing kind of fuels his rage. Now, one thing you and I talked about when we reviewed Space Seed is that it's a little inconsistent that Khan is so angry with Kirk about not checking up on them.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to essentially rule in hell, as
Yes.
the Paradise Lost quote goes. He wants to rule his people even if there is no other society anywhere else. And so I'm not sure why he would be so fixated on, we need this government to keep coming back and checking up on us.
Yeah, exactly. I think that would be the antithesis of what Khan would have wanted. And I don't think Starfleet would have wanted to check up on them for fear of having a starship land and get taken over by Khan. And so Khan would get off and try to take over the Federation again, perhaps. So I think the dealings between Khan and the Federation would not have been very, very major if he had even wanted the Federation to check up on him. Like, neither side would want to check up on the other.
If SETI Alpha 5 and 6 are far enough out that they've been charted, but there aren't ships out here very often because it's far enough out. I mean, like, they're having to go quite a distance. I think they're going a bit of a distance trying to find a planet without life on it, or a moon. So it's kind of an honest mistake that the Federation doesn't know that star exploded, or that, I forget, was it a star that exploded?
No,
we
I
think talked over it.
I think the planet explodes.
Okay.
And
it messes with their orbit.
Messes this one's orbit, yeah.
Stars exploding has become kind of a thing in Star Trek. I couldn't.
Yeah, but if the star explodes, so goes the system.
They'd be all, this whole system would be gone, of course.
Yep.
When I was a kid, this scene terrified me.
Yeah.
And it is one of the most memorable scenes of anything I've ever seen.
Yeah. Just
the design of those creatures.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and of all the life forms to survive, it had to be that one. Why couldn't it have been something like, a zebra or a camel sort of creature?
Interesting that a creature that like burrows into other creatures' ears like that actually survive. Like I guess, but I guess they're not symbiotic or anything, are they? They just
that's just what their young do, I guess.
They're like really evil babelfish.
Yeah. But they don't do a very good job of translating.
No. Instead, they just make the person totally susceptible to suggestion.
Yeah. And see, neither of them remembered to bring their towel.
And now Khan's going to read them bad poetry. So, this really is part of the Botany Bay, right? Or is it not? That was something we debated in Space Seed. We had some people that left comments that were like, no, they just gave them supplies. They didn't actually send down any part of the Botany Bay.
Yeah, but the seatbelt said Botany Bay on it.
Yeah, so, that's the thing.
I mean, they didn't... in the episode, they didn't send down the Botany Bay because Khan left it adrift.
Yeah.
When he was in charge. So... But here they have it. So I don't know. It doesn't look.
And it sure doesn't look Starfleet.
Yeah.
Like if it was Starfleet, what is it? I mean, it says landing capacity on it, so it would have to be a shuttle or something of some kind.
Yeah.
It's got to be Botany Bay.
Yeah.
Plus, they've got really old looking computers there and stuff that doesn't even look, 23rd century Starfleet.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not...
It's a nice set, by the way.
Oh, it is. It's not really a problem for the movie.
It's not a problem for the movie whatsoever. No, I don't even mean to nitpick. I just find it kind of interesting. That I mean, it's a sequel to Space Seed. I don't think they were that careful about it. And at the same time, you got to wonder if they might have had a few issues making the film as interesting if they had stuck that close to Space Seed.
Yeah. Yeah, and
I don't know.
There are always things that you need to change when you go from episode-length stories to full movie intended for big screen general audience length stories.
That's true. It would be something that would be more irritating if the film wasn't good.
That's certainly true.
And that's always the case. It's so much harder not to just straight up start nitpicking and grabbing on to, things that don't matter that much when nothing's working.
Yeah.
And that's a trap I think everybody falls into sometimes.
Yeah.
So we get to see the Enterprise here, and it's kind of a moment of majesty, but it doesn't last 20 minutes.
No.
Like it did in the last film that we did a commentary on.
Yes, because if we want it to last 20 minutes, we can just stop and rewind and watch it, 5, 6, 8 times.
Or you can just go watch Motion Picture again.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's also... I think we should also probably briefly comment on the uniforms, which are so much better.
Yes.
Looking than Motion Picture. And it's nice to get a little bit of color in this movie.
Red is much better than gray.
And I think the belts with the Starfleet symbols on them are just cool looking.
Yeah, they're just snazzy uniforms. I like them.
And again, they look nautical.
Yeah, they look nautical, and they just overall look good.
It's also kind of cool that the engineers have different uniforms.
Mm-hmm. I wonder what the big circle in the middle of their chests is for.
I don't know. Do you wonder if those suits are maybe equipped to be like space ready in case somebody got like sucked out somewhere or something?
Yeah, maybe that's where their like oxygen tube or whatever goes. Or...
Yeah, maybe if they pull that out, they can stick it in their mouth and breathe, or something.
Who knows?
But
Yeah.
wouldn't you still need a mask?
Well, I'm sure they have helmets nearby when they go out.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's also really cool that we've got a little bit of Vulcan there,
Uh-huh.
and Vulcan sounds so different from Klingon.
Yes, which it should.
Yes. Well, it should sound a lot more docile.
Yeah. Less guttural.
I think that there would have been cause for maybe building a whole Vulcan language like they did with Klingon. I was always a little bit surprised they didn't go there.
Well, as many fans as there are of Vulcan,
Oh, huge.
I'm sure
Rivals Klingons.
I'm sure people would love to have a full language for that one.
I also think you'd see more people at conventions doing Vulcans if we had a language.
Yeah.
I think that the Klingon language has a lot to do with the whole Klingon culture phenomenon that happened.
Oh yeah.
And is still actually kind of around.
Uh-huh.
We still have we still have Klingon Institute and things like that.
Yep.
Actually, this is or is that not our proper introduction to the ship? I guess it's not. I guess we're just turning the lights on.
They're getting ready to go.
We got backing out of the driveway. This is a suit I wouldn't mind having for conventions.
Yeah.
I've got a TNG suit. I would not mind having one of these.
Yeah.
They're cool.
Although I think the original series uniforms look very comfy.
Oh yeah, sure they do. But your uniforms for the Navy or Army or something shouldn't necessarily look comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, these look very official.
Yes.
I think that Galaxy Quest is homaging and parroting this scene specifically when they scrape the ship across the side of the docking bay.
It must be because I was actually thinking that same scene.
I always do when I watch this. When Saavik, when Spock says, "Saavik, have you ever piloted out a space dock?"
Yeah.
For everything there is a first time. That's wow. There's so much double entendre in this movie.
Uh-huh.
You know, I could sit here and read into that line if I wanted to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For everything there is a first thing. There's a lot of first things in this movie.
Yeah.
I would like if I were going to sit down and do a full blown, you know, like story analysis of any Star Trek movie. This is the one I would enjoy doing the most.
Oh yeah. Well, it's so dense.
I think that Nicholas Meyer found a fantastic way to balance making a Star Trek movie with making a movie.
Yes.
And that's why this appeals to all kinds of people.
Yeah, and he didn't do it by dumbing it down.
No, not at all.
Or only appealing to the masses, or...
Well, this thing, it appeals to the masses.
It appeals to the masses,
but it doesn't make the assumption that the masses aren't or can't be persuaded to think about things, to think somewhat cerebrally.
That's what I mean.
I don't think it's so, air quote, deep that it goes over people's heads.
Right.
I think that a movie that makes you think has the ability to make anybody think that's willing to go to go an extra inch.
Yeah, this is very much science fiction at the same time as it's simply just telling a story.
Mr. Sulu, you may indulge yourself.
Uh-oh, where's he going?
Oh, Sulu, did you leave the parking brake on again?
He's going back to Wrigley's Pleasure Planet.
Seeing Kirk as an admiral is an interesting position to put him in.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that that's also... I mean, like this movie is kind of a character study for older Kirk. It's like putting the action hero out to pasture.
Mm-hmm.
So now he's an admiral. Now he's kind of got a desk job, and so he's got to stand on the bridge with his hands behind his back, watching somebody else do his job.
Oh yeah. And how many times did you see that in the original series, where he was the captain and there was an admiral on the deck that was just had his hands behind his back watching Kirk, giving him often bad directions.
Yeah, that's right. Being out of touch, and
Yeah.
I think Kirk's maybe I'm making this up. I think one of Kirk's biggest fears is becoming out of touch.
Yeah.
Well, that's in the movie. I mean, he's afraid of getting old,
Uh-huh.
and he doesn't want to become useless.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and here, they should know that that something is up with Chekhov because he's way too smiley.
Yeah, Chekhov, you're kind of creepy, man. Like everybody should really be wondering what the heck is going on right now.
Yeah.
And we got to blame everything on Kirk.
Yes.
Cause we don't like Kirk. Because he stranded us on this planet, and then one of the things that I wish the film had delved a little more into is the death of Khan's wife. I like that that's in there.
Yes.
Because he's got to have more of a personal stake than just, God, our lives have sucked for a long time now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me also recommend the novel To Rule in Hell, which actually covers the time between Space Seed and this film, when Khan and his crew are stranded on Ceti Alpha, and after the other planet explodes and they have to figure out how to live there. It's fascinating. Mm-hmm. It's a really interesting study of somebody starting a civilization from nothing, and Khan is an incredibly sympathetic character. And also ruthless, and his wife MacGyver's.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of really great character stuff done with her before she dies.
Yeah,
Spoiler alert: she dies.
I've been meaning to read that for some time now.
You should. I think you'd like it. I mean, I know you and I aren't the biggest Trek novel buffs, but every now and again a really exceptional one comes along, and that one was great. And in fact, the whole trilogy is quite well. I want to call it a trilogy because you had two books and then that one, which was a prequel. But a prequel to this. The other two were also prequels because they were about the eugenics wars. But the eugenics wars books are good. I honestly liked it about a smidge better than even the eugenics wars books, which was written by the same author. His name doesn't come to my mind right now.
Sure.
McCoy, who's been holding up the elevator? McCoy gets just like amusing line after amusing line. You know, he's kind of your comic relief without being a cartoon.
Yeah.
And it's just in his character. And what I love about McCoy is that he's never trying to be funny.
No.
He's just hilarious.
It just comes out that way. And he was that way in the series too, although I think they did more with it even in the movies than in the series.
Greg Cox, by the way, wrote the Eugenics Wars books. Who's taking Genesis? I only have a Super Nintendo. By the way, I have to say that's a great joke in the Angry Video Game Nerd video about the Star Trek games, where a Klingon shows up and he's like, "You want Genesis?" He picks up a Sega Genesis. You can have Genesis. I thought Ralph did a great job with that.
That's great.
That was really funny. He is clearly at least a casual Star Trek fan. He knew enough to make that very funny.
Yes.
Very funny, and it's one of my favorite videos of his.
Yeah.
Man, that's a rockin' looking video arcade, Sarah.
Yeah. I love how the camera is just circling these guys.
Well, you have to use your space well, and how can you not get in a big round room like that and not spin around it with a camera, right? Like, you're gonna want to do that if you're a director in a big round room with a hallway circling everybody.
I think this director just likes spinning things.
Yeah, there is quite a lot of that. There's our giant Idic on the wall of Spock's quarters. I think that's just cool.
You know, I never noticed that before.
Even before this this viewing?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there it is. The giant Idic tapestry. And you notice that the way the light hits it, they can't photograph it without it popping out, without parts of it flickering. I really wonder what it's made out of.
Yeah.
See, now that you see it, you can't not look at it.
Yeah, I know. I always just thought it was some big brown shiny thing.
Nope, that's a Vulcan Idic.
Huh. Never looked at the pattern on it.
And the symbols going down Spock's robe are Vulcan language.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen books and things that have taken that and actually made a written language, and those are apparently actually symbols of the Vulcan language. I don't know what they say on his. I mean, naturally,
sure.
I don't know if they're supposed to say anything on the robe or anything. You know, I've never seen any
Yeah.
notes or anything about that in this particular film.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that the Vulcan language, it's a very, very fancy, fancy script, and I could see them writing it a lot. I could see that on buildings or in rooms and things.
And I think it always goes vertical like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if I'm right about that.
As far as I've ever seen it, it has.
They might have been thinking of, you know, Eastern languages when they wrote that, because of course, you know, a lot of those languages are written vertically.
Mm-hmm.
Needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
The big line of the movie.
Yep. And it's been overused in Star Trek subsequently.
Yeah.
Most certainly. But it's also a huge thing that permeated the culture.
Mm-hmm.
That pops up in other things, and people are not shy. I'm not thinking of any good examples right now, but people are not shy that came from Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
That and Revenge is a dish best served cold.
Which is an awesome quote.
Now, did that originate from this movie, or was he quoting something? Because Khan is quoting things so much, it's hard to know when his great lines aren't just a quote. Because, of course, you know, his line at the end, I spit at thee and all of that. Like, that's not him. He's quoting there.
Sure. Yeah, I'd have to look that up. I'm not sure right off.
All of the great Star Trek villains love to quote something.
Yes.
Although it's not a coincidence at all that Nicholas Meyer also directed Star Trek VI.
Cry havoc!
I'm looking forward to getting to that one with you. Because all you'll want to do the whole time is quote Chang.
You'll have to get me a spinny chair for that. I
know you can have my spinny chair.
I know we're not filming this on camera, but I need a spinny chair.
We'll just make a video where you do that. We'll get you an eye patch that you can bolt to your face.
I draw the line at bolts.
Okay. Wow. It's amazing that your line isn't somewhere before bolts.
This far and no further.
I think there's some really cool wardrobe with Khan's cronies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look at his sleeve. It's all tattered. I mean, you can tell that life has been hard on their clothing.
Nice attention to detail.
Yeah. I wonder whose uniform Khan is wearing. Do you think that's Chekhov's?
Well, no, because Chekhov's got his uniform. I mean, he was just on screen earlier, wearing it. So I don't know.
Maybe Chekhov's taking a nap and Khan's using it.
Now, something else that's interesting is that Khan's wearing this medallion, and of course, the medallion looks like it might have been taken off of like a belt or something.
Uh-huh.
But in the original series episode, of course, they didn't have those.
Yeah.
And so the question is, I think he had that on the planet.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
In the novel, To Reign in Hell, there's actually an explanation as to how he got it and where it came from, and it's good and plausible, and I thought it was really cool. I don't remember exactly what it is now, but it's in that book. But again, here we're kind of remembering what happened in Space Seed, but we're finagling it a little bit to make it work in this movie. It might help us too if we knew what Genesis was, Spock. Yeah. Okay. So we've all got to load up and have a briefing meeting, an expository briefing.
Who's gonna play Tails?
Oh, that's a great point because we're going to come in here and we're going to play some Genesis, and Kirk's going to be Sonic, and McCoy's going to be Tails, and Spock is going to be McCoy's going to be Knuckles because McCoy's really sarcastic.
Yeah. Sega.
I just can't get out. I can't get away from that. That's so funny. Wow, Carol Marcus is Zone 1.
That's what we want to know.
So now we get our, about 40 minutes in the movie, we get our big science fiction plot. Before we know, we've got kind of a revenge thing going on. We know... Now, we've already certainly had some science fiction, not just in the general sense of we're in space, and there's some scientific mission to some planet, and we had a planet that exploded, but also in that, of course, we've had at least a mention of the eugenics wars, and that, Khan comes from genetic engineering and messing with stuff. So we've already got that. Now we've got our big motif that's going to actually parallel Khan. Mm-hmm. Khan came from man playing God, and that is precisely what this is doing.
Yes. Yeah, literally. They're taking a world that has no life and they're making life on it.
Yeah, and they called it Genesis.
Yeah.
Like
can't
we're
get much more literal than that.
More literal than that. Yeah, we played God, and I don't think that it's too far in our face or anything. It's a natural thing to call it.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and it's an intriguing idea.
Sure, yeah, and just like genetic engineering, in the right hands, you can see how it would be a great technology that would improve the quality of life.
Yeah, but in the wrong hands, you could see how lots of problems could result.
Well, and what's cool is, the first thing... I never thought about this before, Sarah. The first thing we know about Genesis is that it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Because she says, we have to find a planet without one microbe on it. We don't know why, but once we know what Genesis is, we know, if you shoot that into a planet that is... and you try to terraform a planet with it that's already got life on it, it's, the destruction that could happen is astronomical. So, we know it can be used as a weapon before we know that it can be a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and right now they're discussing the moral implications of it.
Because that's why you do something like this in Star Trek. This is what Star Trek is for. It's going to be a fun movie. We're going to have a good time, but we're also going to make you think a little bit.
Yeah. I love that quote from McCoy, where he's like, the Earth was made in 6 days. Now we're going to do it in 6 minutes.
It's almost like he's sarcastically making an infomercial.
Yeah.
And of course, the classic McCoy, he's got to call Spock inhuman because Spock isn't immediately freaking out about the dangers of this thing.
Yeah.
Yes, there's morality, but there's also practicality.
Yes. And a Vulcan must weigh all the options and can't take anything emotionally.
And Spock is so often making a great, in this movie and also in the original series, Spock is constantly making a great case for his logical way of thinking. Mm-hmm. That let's not react impulsively, because acting impulsively can either make you miss great opportunities or, totally ruin everything.
Yeah.
There was even a little bit of that. This doesn't have anything to do with Vulcans, but I mean, like, Star Trek likes to do that. There was even a little bit of that in Enterprise, where Phlox was discussing genetic engineering in an episode that dealt with it, and Phlox was always really open-minded, and he was a character I always liked when they actually did something with him. And Phlox would say, I've seen other planets that have handled genetic engineering just fine. It's like a normal part of their operation. They figured out how to do it.
Yeah.
Just like Earth figured out how to stop killing everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I like the idea of looking at both sides of this and saying that just because a technology can be used for evil doesn't make it inherently evil necessarily, or maybe it does. That's the question that you have to kind of noodle. And so from that episode I'm talking about, from Phlox's perspective, well, it's not always evil because these people figured out how to do it. But then from another person's perspective, maybe something like this is evil because it hurt somebody somewhere.
Yeah.
But then isn't that true of every technology?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it looks like Revenge is a Dish Best Served Cold is not from this movie. It's been preceded because Khan says, isn't there an old proverb that says?
Let's go ahead and try to look it up. That doesn't mean that it was quoted from anything that already pre-existed.
That's true.
It doesn't necessarily mean that.
I think it was, but I just can't remember what it's from.
Well, I'll do a little research, see if we can figure it out.
Okay. But here comes Kirk's first big mistake. Not raising the shields.
It is originally from a French novel called Memoirs of Matilda, published in 1846. And the original quote was, or at least this is the first example that anybody's able to find, the quote was, "And then revenge is very good eaten cold, as the vulgar say." And presumably this is a quote that might not have even actually been the first time anybody ever said it. Apparently, this is a colloquialism that's been passed down.
Huh. That's interesting.
Anyway.
Kirk's in trouble.
This scene is thrilling because Kirk doesn't know who he's up against.
Yeah.
And also because he's fighting a Federation starship.
Yes.
So who is this person in a Starfleet vessel? We can't just fire on him right away.
Yeah. And yet he should have raised shields.
Yeah. But it's not an enemy vessel.
Yeah.
A lot of red in this movie.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of interesting. I mean, like, there's some symbolism even in some of the color palette, where before he sees Khan, his bridge gets all messed up, and then it's all red. And I mean, again, I might be reading into this, but Kirk doesn't realize he's responsible for a little bit of bloodshed.
Yeah.
And when he sees Khan, his side is completely clean and normal looking. I just think that's very interesting.
Yeah.
And now he is turned into a real villain because he's only wearing one evil glove.
Yeah, I want to kill you.
Oh, you got to work on your Ricardo Montalban a little bit.
Welcome to my island, Captain Kirk.
On the border. Oh man, I always like Ricardo Montalban, and he was really good natured and had a great sense of humor too. He did a lot of he did a little bit of comedy. He did some voiceovers. He was in Freakazoid. And
in Freakazoid.
And said Revenge is a Dish Best Served. He basically played Khan as a businessman.
That's hilarious.
In Freakazoid. That was pretty great. And actually, the origin of Freakazoid. That's pretty great. And then he was in The Naked Gun, one of the Naked Gun movies.
Mm-hmm. I always thought he was a brilliant actor.
Well, and he's one of those guys where his accent helps him a lot.
Yes. Well, it makes him so distinctive.
But yeah, he was a genius actor. Did you ever actually watch Fantasy Island?
Yes.
Did you? I've
did.
only ever seen 1 or 2 episodes.
Oh, I loved that show. I've probably seen a dozen episodes. So it's almost kind of the same thing all the time, which is probably why I like it. You knowing my taste in TV.
Yeah.
But it was great. The stories were just fun.
One thing I always thought was really hilarious, I don't know if you know this, but do you know who took his place in the remake of Fantasy Island in the 90s?
No.
Malcolm McDowell.
Wait, really?
Yes. So we had the villain from Generations playing his role. And think about it for a minute. You could see that.
How fitting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I only saw like an episode of that, and it didn't catch on. But I liked what little I saw of that, or at least I liked Malcolm McDowell in that role.
Yeah.
Isn't that great?
Well, I know you're a big fan of Malcolm McDowell.
I like him a lot. Or as Red Letter Media like to call him, Malcolm McDonald. Malcolm McDonald. Classically, in case I forget to mention this later, Kirk and Khan never on screen together.
Yeah.
They have dialogue together across view screens and stuff, but those two actors never appear in the same room.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was fascinating because they have such a great rivalry and rapport.
Oh, it's great. And their rivalry in this and the way they play cat and mouse with each other is like the first appearance of Romulans in the original series.
Great point.
Yeah, with the Romulan commander, and where Kirk and the Romulan commander just try to outfox each other the entire episode.
And they don't show up on screen together either.
No, they don't. And it's so cool that at the end they have mutual admiration for each other.
And what's great is Khan and Kirk have that too.
Yeah.
Except that there's more blood between them. There's actual... This is personal for Khan. And it becomes personal for Kirk.
Yeah. Here it comes. I think hitting the panel won't do too much for you.
Yeah, that's not going to help. And it's always fun to see Kirk do, really, really cool, ingenious fake outs and things. I mean, like, this is almost on the level of the Corbomite MacGuffin.
Yeah. Yeah, Kirk always has to have an ace up his sleeve. And that's a cool shot.
Yeah, the Reliant flying over the Enterprise.
Yes.
That's one of the more memorable ship shots, I think, in all of Star Trek. I don't know why. Mm-hmm. I guess just seeing a ship that close to another one. Keep in mind, that's something you never got to see in TOS.
Yeah.
In the original series, before it was remastered, you didn't get to see ships really on the three-dimensional plane like that.
No, they were kind of moving across the screen sideways. Oh, and that's sad. The scene with the shot with Scotty holding the dead crewman.
Yeah, I'd like to say they give every original series character something really great to do in this. They don't, unfortunately. But that's one. But that's a really interesting thing where we're making this personal for more than just Kirk.
Yeah, it's such a poignant image. Where on the bridge they come across unscathed and they're almost celebrating that, they outsmarted Khan, and yet you remember the seriousness of what actually happened in that short battle.
This sickbay is really sterile looking.
Yeah.
Those are some great famous last words there.
Yeah.
Is the word given.
Yeah.
Interesting how we have a character there that gets very, very little to do, and it's still kind of sad that he dies. Not that we have a whole lot of stake in it, not that we care a whole lot about him, but we do because it's Scotty. And here's a look on his face you've never seen Scotty have before.
No. And Kirk has the bloody handprint on his uniform.
That's cool. And also, obviously, kind of symbolic. Maybe a little heavy-handed. No, I'm kidding. But just that, he's... If it weren't for Kirk, this would have never happened.
Right.
This is all... Again, this is all about the decisions we've made in the past coming back to haunt us. Kirk has that in spades in this movie. He's got it with the illegitimate son he never knew he had. He's got that with Khan, who he stranded and thought it was a good idea at the time, but didn't realize it was ever going to come back to bite him again. And so it's like he's missing his glory days as he's getting older. But then there's something to say for leaving the past behind you, because his past wasn't all glory days, was it?
Yeah.
Now it's coming back to him. It's like you can't outrun your past, and no matter how old you get, all of those things, there are still consequences for your actions, even if they come years and years later.
Yeah.
We've never studied Kirk as hard as we do in this movie.
Yeah, that's true. This scene, now that we've had Enterprise, actually reminds me of Cold Station 12.
Really?
Yeah, where they're approaching this station and it's empty, and now that I've seen Cold Station 12, I get this creepy feeling like they're gonna go there and find all these people like hanging from the ceiling.
Oh
dead.
Yeah, that was creepy. There's a lot of creepy in that episode.
Yeah.
I wonder if they weren't thinking Wrath of Khan a little bit when they made that. Well, they had to have been... Cold Station 12, they had to have been thinking Wrath of Khan because
it was eugenics.
Based on it.
Yeah.
But the fact that they go to a space station... it's kind of like when we dealt real hard with Klingon politics in that show, we had to go to Repente.
Yeah.
And that show liked to borrow from the movies a lot.
Yeah.
We opened In a Mirror Darkly with the end of First Contact.
Yeah.
And then we based Regeneration on First Contact. They loved the movies in that show.
Yeah. Which may have been part of the problem, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah, but most of the movie-based things were things I actually liked.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Especially the big Klingon judge with the ball.
Yeah, they did that too.
Gavel.
Oh, that whole episode has Undiscovered Country all over it.
Oh, yeah.
I know I say this a lot, but this is another one of those movies. This is another one of those movies that is really difficult to just sit here and talk over.
Oh, it is.
Not just watch.
Yeah. I love how Uhura's just on the screen, still trying to make contact, even though people have already beamed down.
She's got people over there, and we don't hear her the whole time. But then after a while, they bring her voice back, and we start hearing her. And then after a while, Kirk just gets fed up with it. And he's like, Uhura, it's okay, we're over here. Although, if you remember, you mentioned bodies and things in Cold Station 12. Well, they find dead bodies here.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not hanging from meat hooks and stuff, but I mean, they're here.
Yeah, it's not quite as creepy as it was in that episode.
Although Cold Station, I guess I'm not remembering it right. I don't remember them finding bodies. I thought that was a torture thing.
Maybe that was.
Because this is where they do find...
Okay, so actually, this is the bodies.
They are from meat hooks, yeah.
And then
this is the bodies, and the Cold Station 12
that was the torture thing.
Remember, they torture Phlox's friend, Jeremy Lucas. Yeah.
Yeah, that was just a bit rough for me.
Oh, no, it is. Absolutely. I think it was good, but...
Yeah.
here it comes. Oh, no, she's just going to keep doing it.
Admiral, over here, we found her on this TV.
No. She's still hailing us. I don't know why, but this room keeps reminding me of that scientist lab in Ninja Turtles 2.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's a lot smaller, but...
Yeah. They only have one carton of ooze left.
And they got to play catch with it.
Yes.
And they got to try to keep it away from that right-hand man of Shredder's. I forget that guy's name. Tatsu.
Yeah.
Remember Tatsu? I don't know why I'm talking about that.
Oh, yeah. Tatsu's great. I can quote almost all that guy's lines.
Honestly, I have no idea why they did that thing with Uhura. Is that supposed to be funny, or is it just
know.
because this is not really a laughing calm moment?
Yeah.
You know, this is eerie. There's no music at all during this. We're just walking around this creepy... I mean, it's like a survival horror game, right? We're walking around this creepy space station, and we're finding dead bodies, and then we find... And then we find Captain Terrell and Chekhov in a box, and they're, like, folded up, and maybe they're dead.
Uh-huh.
Like, before we've even figured out if Chekhov is actually alive, we go back to Uhura. Leave us alone! I'm kidding. They don't go that far.
Yeah.
But anyway, I guess that was just a funny thing to me that really took me out.
Yeah. No, that bothered me every time I watched.
You notice the patch on the side of Kirk's sleeve there?
Oh yeah.
It looks like a solar system patch. Like there's planets, there's rings, and then there's planets around it.
Yeah. It actually, it looks like it represents our solar system. That's what it looks like to me.
I think that's kind of cool. Terrell's so creepy.
Yeah.
Because he's got this vacant expression, and he's talking like a ghost, and he's just... Or like an automaton.
Yeah.
Because they've still got those things.
Although I don't know why nobody picks up on that.
Yeah, but you could certainly say that because Chekhov's doing less of it.
Yeah.
You could say that he's just freaked out because he got thrown in a box, and all these people got hung up on meat hooks.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he's just too freaked out. Kirk's dealt with captains and especially commodores.
Yeah.
That are too wigged out to function properly.
That's true.
Stage 2 of Genesis. They were going to call it the Saturn. Or maybe it was the Sega CD. So, what do you think of Kirstie Alley's performance in this as Savig?
I think she seems like a Vulcan. I think she's fine in this.
I always like the idea of having another Vulcan around.
Yeah, especially seeing a female one.
And a full Vulcan.
And a full Vulcan, yeah.
We haven't met very many of them yet.
Yeah. No, it's... I think it was a good choice.
And I also think that the actress that replaced her was great, too.
Yeah.
And, of course, this was where she got her start. I think this was her first role. Her first major role, at least.
Yeah.
But, yeah, this kind of about where she got her start. Of course, she was a big thing for a while.
Yeah.
I saw Kirstie Alley on a game show before she was ever famous.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I think she was on Match Game.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was on an episode of Match Game.
That's cool.
And back then she was like a fashion designer or an interior designer or something.
Uh-huh.
Or at least that's what she said when they asked her what she did.
Yeah.
And this would have been like mid-70s.
That's really crazy.
And then she was in this movie not 6-7 years later.
Yeah.
Little random tidbits of fun. A lot of nice understated sets in this movie. Clearly enough money behind it that he could do what it needed to, although they didn't blow nearly as much cash, of course, as they did on the motion picture, and they needed to really reel it back.
Yeah.
Because they spent so much money on that movie and kept rewriting scripts, and frankly, some of the money that was spent on motion picture was wasted.
Yeah.
And this movie came in either under budget or right on budget, and made, of course, way, way more. And this movie, frankly, is responsible for the fact that we got 6 TOS films.
Yeah. Yeah. And Kirk meets his son.
And his ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think Kirk is really lucky that he doesn't have, like, random children all over the galaxy.
But we don't know.
No, that's true. We don't know. Considering the fact that they're all over the galaxy. You know, he probably conveniently doesn't give anyone his phone number.
Yeah. But everyone knows where to reach him, I'm sure.
You gotta wonder if he's got any, like half-green children.
Yeah. He has a weird bracelet. It's attached to his armband.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about. I was kind of wondered. Well, Terrell just killed the one person in the room that doesn't matter. We gotta do that. It's Star Trek. We
Yeah,
gotta do that.
gotta kill somebody random.
That's important. But yeah, Khan is just ruthless.
Yeah. Yeah, this and what follows all the way through the end of this scene is just great. Just with these people, you can really tell that they're torn.
Yeah, we don't get to know Terrell very well, so the only thing the movie can really do to make him sympathetic and let us care about him is show that he's strong-willed enough to kind of fight this and, you know, to commit suicide.
Yeah.
We don't really expect that he's going to die necessarily.
No, you really don't. But yeah, the first time I saw this, it was quite a shock when he turned it on himself, because
yeah,
you just don't expect that.
Especially in Star Trek, we've never seen anything like that in Star Trek.
No.
This is darker than Trek had ever really gone. Spacey dealt with some kind of dark themes, so for TOS, it was going a little farther than we'd really seen before.
Yeah.
But this is doing what a lot of the science fiction at the time was doing, where it was kind of pushing envelopes a little bit, and it was doing more. We'd see more blood, more things like that, and it was always okay. As like I always say, as long as it served the story. But I mean, like, this was around the same time as Aliens. Uh-huh. And we were doing some sci-fi horror at this point and things like that. And so there were elements of that in this movie. And I think that just gave it more credibility, again, for general audiences, that, this is weighty and it's not kitschy anymore.
Uh-huh.
Motion picture wasn't kitschy. It looked really polished, but it was also just really slow, and it was hard for people to take it seriously because of that. This has got a real weightiness to it.
Yeah. It's actually a serious film, and it's just all around well made. Oh no, did he just take Genesis?
I always think about the different kind of cultural things that permeated after this movie and kept going, and I think about them separately, and then I watch the movie again and I go, wow, just every other scene has something people quote.
Yeah.
There's all the time.
Yeah.
That kept showing up after this. And of course here we've got, Kirk's screaming Khan that everybody remembers, and was an internet meme before we had the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I still like the Khan buried alive whispering.
I do too. I mean, like what Khan says is equally memorable.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what makes these two guys such great foils.
Uh-huh.
Is that, I mean, they're both kind of dramatic, they're both theatrical. One of them is a little more poetic and eloquent than the other one. I'll leave it to you to guess who I'm talking about.
Yeah, they play off of each other so well. And you'd hate to have a mismatch where one of them was very high energy and the other one just couldn't get up to that level.
Yeah, of course, and we see that all the time.
Yeah. Especially with villains in Star Trek movies, it seems.
I think it's also very important to keep in mind when you're making a movie like this, like how much screen time a villain should get.
Yeah.
That's a tough thing to balance.
Yeah.
You look at some movies and the villain kind of takes over, and is kind of the whole movie, and you either get sick of seeing him or he becomes almost the protagonist, not really, but for the, he's the person people are invested in just because he's so much fun to look at, right?
Yeah.
We had that problem, a lot of people had that problem with the Joker in '89, of course.
Yeah.
We see him more often than we see Batman. And
we get no character stuff for Batman either, so we have the Enigma Batman, and then Joker, who we get all the backstory for and all the character development for.
And frankly, he's not even all that developed either. But yeah, but
no,
yeah.
Not very.
But again, this is a character study of Kirk and specifically of older Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
Through the lens of this rivalry. And so, I don't feel like we're ever away from Kirk for too long. I don't feel like we're ever outside of his head. We have scenes where we go to Khan and Kirk and none of other characters are there, but I never feel like we strayed too far away from that.
Yeah.
I think it's also cool that Khan has this almost immortality over Kirk in that, I mean, he's not immortal or anything. He's been aging since he went to Ceti Alpha, but he's in a way so much older than Kirk. He's larger than life. He's been around forever because he comes from the 1990s.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so the story about age, it's just interesting that we've got this story about what it means to get older. And then his foil is this guy who history can't keep dead.
Yeah.
He keeps coming back.
Yeah, I'd never thought about it that way, but that's certainly the case. And I think that's maybe part of what makes Khan so interesting, is that he just keeps coming back. And Kirk's going to win, but is he really going to win for good this time? I mean, is he going to defeat Khan so that Khan can't come back? Or is Khan going to get away and come back another time?
And also, Khan being his fault, and there are a number of things here that are Kirk's fault. Even if he beats Khan, what does it mean for his future? Will Khan end up winning out in some kind of a less literal way? Mm-hmm. By the end. I mean, when we get to the end of this movie, we've got the death of Spock. We've got the death of several people,
mm-hmm.
but we've got the death of Spock, which Kirk has to take some kind of a personal blame for. I mean, he doesn't really blame himself real hard. We never see that in his character, but there are implications there, certainly.
Yeah, Kirk wins, but he didn't come out. Price? Yeah, he didn't come out unscathed. And a lot of things could have been avoided had he either been paying more attention or, there were certainly crossroads where he took one path and he could regret it.
But all in hindsight.
All in hindsight, exactly.
What's cool is, did Kirk... The question is, and I like that Kirk's not constantly beating himself down and whining about everything. He's figuring out how to move forward. He becomes more serious about things.
Yes.
Because he has to. But the question remains, did Kirk actually make any real mistakes? At all? He certainly made decisions that led to bad things,
uh-huh.
but only in hindsight do we know that. The question is, did he actually break any of his own moral code?
Well,
we sure didn't think so in Space Seed.
No. I do think that here, when he first comes up against the Reliant, he did fail to follow regulations, as quoted by Savick. And so that was probably the one thing.
True, yeah. So there are mistakes he makes in this movie because he gets blindsided. But I guess what I mean is, in the past, in any of the things leading up to this, I mean, like, in having a son he never knew about, with that relationship, and with this, did he make any real mistakes against his own moral code? I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah. I think if he had that all to do over again, he probably would have done the same thing.
Probably would have done it the same way. And that's really interesting. And I think that's how you can validate Kirk moving forward and putting the past behind. I think so the idea is you can't escape your past, but you also can't live in the past. Sometimes you have to deal with the consequences of actions you made, but you don't do that by constantly guessing.
Yeah, and Kirk is a very look-forward character. He doesn't dwell on mistakes he's made. He learns from them, he adapts, he moves forward.
And that's actually illustrated in what he's talking about right now with the Kobayashi Maru, where this is where he's explaining that he that he reprogrammed the test, and that he doesn't like a no-win scenario. I think that has to do with his refusal to live in the past.
Yeah.
He's always moving forward.
Yeah. He finds an obstacle, and no obstacle's too big. He's going to overcome it. And so he looks at Khan as another obstacle to overcome. He's in desperate straits, but he'll figure out a way.
I think it's really goofy that they're talking while they're beaming.
Yeah.
And that they can understand each other as they're in the matter stream.
Yeah.
Just wanted to throw that out there. It's kind of nice to have somebody quoting the book to Kirk and kind of keeping him on his toes a little bit.
Yeah.
Because somebody like Kirk, if I think he always that's why he likes having Spock around, because Spock always did that, and he's the kind of person that knows that you can't always just do what the book says or follow orders or whatever, and sometimes you have to make up your own thing to do the right. Sometimes the right thing is not the ordered thing.
Yeah. And
so you need someone to keep you in check if you're going to have that kind of personality, because we're all human, and how easy is it to run at the hip, to run off the hip, and
yeah, oh, exactly, and how appropriate that it's a Vulcan who's quoting the regulations.
Precisely.
And the bridge is red again.
Yeah. You got a lot of Kirk being really clever in this movie, and that helps make him as the protagonist really sympathetic also.
Yeah. And I always thought that was Kirk at his best.
Yeah, he keeps giving us examples of why he's such a great captain, and we're not just told that.
Yes.
And of course, we had that all over TOS too.
Yeah. Kirk is always great when he's either outsmarting his enemies or destroying evil computers.
Yep. By the way, all this space stuff really holds up well.
Yeah. Oh, it looks gorgeous.
And of course, 1982, it's all model work, and it looks really good. What are these sticks for? What are these light sticks for?
Glow sticks.
People are carrying around. All these kind of fun details I always enjoyed, of like being in the engineering bay and seeing how the torpedoes get loaded and pulling off all the grates and everything. Again, it's really nautical. Like I like the idea that we're asked to suspend our disbelief far enough that we can that we're able to buy that this far in the future you'd still need that many hands on a starship.
Yeah.
You get to TNG, and sometimes I find myself wondering, why are there that many people on the ship? There's so many of them are just standing around all the time. Yeah. Here, everybody has to do. It's like watching people on a giant sailing vessel. There's always something that needs to be done.
Oh yeah, and it's interesting that we get to see the torpedo loaded here, when that's one of the last scenes in the movie with Spock going down to the planet.
They're setting up stuff to knock them down later on. And the famous Mutara Nebula.
Remember that name.
Why?
Because it's famous.
Oh, okay.
And that's...
No Man is an Island. I mean, there's a lot of quoting, literature in this movie.
And the Mutara Nebula makes great desktop wallpaper.
That's right. It's cool that this movie is... You could kind of call this an action movie in that there is action that happens in it, but none of it is just wild, crazy. You can't tell what's going on, and it's just there to amuse. It's again, everything that's here is serving the plot, so it's a game of strategy, and it's more about watching a couple people play a really interesting looking board game.
Yeah.
Than it is about, oh man, there's missiles flying everywhere.
Well, and after you said that, I thought back to earlier in this film when we were first on the Botany Bay. One of the things we see in that ship is a checkers board.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. I think it would have been cooler if it was chess. But we get chess all over Star Trek.
Yeah,
But I'm just saying chess is harder than checkers.
checkers is a good game of strategy, too, though.
I suppose so. It's too bad that there's not some game that... Some big strategy game that everybody knows of that really only uses 2 pieces. It's nice that we're in a region of space where I actually buy that people have a difficult time seeing each other, and that the sensors aren't working right, and all of that. Because there's so many places in Star Trek where it's like, let's hide behind a moon, and no one will be able to find us, you know?
Yeah.
We actually found this region of space. You know, this is like the Briar Patch in DS9.
Yeah. Well, and it's great that it's a space that Kirk is able to use to his full advantage, because he knows that Khan isn't used to thinking in 3 dimensions with flying a ship.
That's one of the greatest plot points of the movie, I think. I mean, yeah, he's got the superior intellect, but Kirk has experience on his side.
Yeah.
So I don't think you could say that Khan is dumb enough to, in theory, not understand, oh, space is in 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
Or that we have all 3 dimensions to our advantage. But he's not used to playing in this space.
Right. And
so
when
this does require experience.
Yeah. Yeah, and back when he was on Earth in the 90s, I mean, there were jets and things, but I'm sure he wasn't flying in them often.
Yeah.
And...
yeah, he wouldn't be used to this.
Yeah.
I mean, look at this. Like, there's a lot of what looks like open space without much between them.
Yeah.
You know, with the one ship that's above and the one that's below, and Khan just doesn't know how to... well, and of course, I mean, I'm sure there's enough of a haze that they can't really scan it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, Kirk is just really brilliant in this, and he's using all those years of experience. I mean, I think that this is also making a good case to Kirk that, oh, maybe there are perks to being as old as I am. I've got all these years of experience under my belt.
Yeah.
And maybe 28-year-old me wouldn't have handled this as well.
Yeah.
And also, of course, he's dealt with Khan before, so he knows something about him.
Yeah, he knows his personality. He might be able to anticipate his next move.
That shot with the white light behind the Enterprise is one I see used a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
That's another really memorable shot. I don't know. It's just there's a whole lot of just kind of hanging in space, but this is all kind of thrilling, right? Like,
yeah.
Again, it's not like motion picture where you're just kind of bored wondering why we're looking at this.
Yeah, well, because you're invested in the characters and you're trying to watch them. You're trying to see who ends up on top, who outsmarts the other, and how.
Literally in this case, given that there's one ship
yeah.
below and one above.
Yeah, and ouch! I think that guy's dead.
That guy's probably dead. See, look, there's casualties on both sides.
Yeah, and again, another display of Khan's superhuman strength.
Now, Sarah, you've actually read Paradise Lost.
I have, but it's been about 15 years.
What's the major theme in that book?
Well, the theme that this one is most playing off of is where well, I mean, it's the better to serve in hell than to reign in heaven.
Okay, so
and it's just a
that.
continuation of that. Yeah.
And of course, you know, Kirk's taken that away from him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he kind of had that even when that planet blew up, but like a lot of his people are dead. They don't have much food. They're and also importantly, I don't know what his plan is for Genesis exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can see why he'd want it for multiple reasons. I mean, he could use it as a weapon against his greatest enemy, but he could also create a planet for himself, I guess.
Yeah, he could. But now that he has a ship...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, come to think of it, now he's maybe even got the means to go and do what he was trying to do as a conqueror.
Yeah. And
so now we can go to real civilization.
yeah, I don't see any reason why he couldn't just go off and do whatever he wants right now, except that
once he gets Genesis.
Yeah.
Well, actually, he's got it right
Genesis,
now.
But he wants to get his revenge.
He's got to get his revenge on Kirk before he uses it. But yeah, what I like is there are a lot of villains where their be-all, end-all is just, I gotta get revenge on this other guy. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that can work, but more often than not, I feel like a lot of characters that would really want revenge on somebody, they wouldn't see that as like the end of their life. They would want to be able to I'm sure some of them would want to move on past that.
Yeah. Or
like part of their revenge is that I get to live on and you don't.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So I like that in this case, we've got Khan, who's like, I'm gonna take out my greatest enemy and get revenge on him for what he did to my wife and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm gonna go, get my life back. And I think there's a parallel there with Kirk, too, where he's worried about getting old and having lost his glory days. Khan also, to a degree, is maybe thinking about trying to regain his glory days.
Yeah.
That's what he's always been about. He wants to conquer, and he's lost that ability until now that he's maybe gained it back.
Yeah.
We talked over it, or I talked over it, but I love that music cue when the Enterprise comes up behind the Reliant. And we sit there for a long time without any music and any sound of any kind, just in anticipation.
Mm-hmm.
For that to happen. And you know it's going to happen, but the build-up is the fun part.
Yeah. Yeah.
This all still holds up.
Oh, yeah. The
really
Reliant
good.
without its nacelle.
That's cool.
It's all sparking.
They're showing us a lot of stuff we've never seen in Star Trek up to this point.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a novelty to getting to see things like that. By the way, that makeup job's amazing.
Yeah.
When he gets his face all messed up. But there's a little bit of a novelty to getting to see something wrecked that you've always seen in pristine condition before.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting that he's got half his face burned and the other half is fine.
Yeah.
Got this total two-face thing going on.
Yeah, except his hand on the good side of his face is messed up, and his gloved
Well,
hand
if
is
only
fine.
he had worn two gloves, Khan.
Yeah, you gotta love that he has one more thing to play.
Because if he's going to go down,
yeah,
he's got to take Kirk with him. I don't know if revenge stories ever get much better than Wrath of Khan.
It'd be hard.
I mean, there's different sorts of revenge stories,
Yeah.
certainly. I just mean this kind of classic, just straight up, hero villain. The villain's mad at the hero, but the hero is still the hero. You get other. I mean, revenge is almost a whole genre. You get other revenge stories where it's actually the protagonist who wants to get revenge, and we're rooting for him.
Yeah.
Because some evil person did something to him, and he's got to get his comeuppance,
Yeah, plenty of stories like that.
And those can be really fun in that, we're watching somebody who's doing terrible things, but we can't help but
root for him in some case because something horrible was done to him,
or even if it's, or kind of think of it, even if it's like something horrible happened to somebody else and that person is getting revenge in that person's name. You had that a little bit with like Hardigan in Sin City.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And of course that's what Taken is all about.
Mm-hmm.
So Sulu gets nothing to do in this movie.
Yeah.
And Uhura gets nothing to do in this movie. Uhura gets nothing to do really in any movie worth speaking of.
Yeah.
She gets to do that stupid dance in 5, but
that's not worth talking about.
Character-wise, they never give her anything.
Yeah.
And Sulu gets a little more to do, at least in 6.
Yeah, I think they make up for it in 6 with Sulu.
Yeah, for the most part.
But
except that was something that was supposed to happen a lot earlier. I don't remember if it was Wrath of Khan or Search for Spock where Sulu was supposed to get his promotion. I think it was maybe this movie, but I can't remember. I don't want to say that for sure because I don't remember, but I know that there was this whole story about how Shatner didn't want Takei to upstage him. Something Takei never got over. He was always angry about it.
yeah.
And he didn't want to get upstaged because the story is all about Kirk. So he didn't like that Sulu was getting promoted to captain. So he did the scene, but he was just a total jerk during the scene, apparently, from what I've heard. And,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the way Takei tells it. So they actually gutted the whole scene.
Huh.
I've always found it fascinating and a little bit perplexing that they set up all of these elements to bring Spock back from the dead, and claimed prior to Search for Spock they had no plans on bringing him back.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you've got the mind meld,
Yeah.
and you've got him on the Genesis planet, and I mean, like, it's all set up. It's all ready to go. And you even hear Leonard Nimoy give the speech at the end.
Yeah.
And then the old TOS opening speech. And then they talk about it like Leonard Nimoy didn't want to come back unless he got to direct. So when they let him direct Search for Spock, then they brought Spock back.
Yeah. Maybe they just made sure they had it out just in case.
It's just weird listening to some of the people who worked on this movie talk about it, because it's almost as if sometimes they talk about it. It's been a while since I've listened to Nicholas Meyer's commentary on this, but like he and other people talked about this as if they had to come up with something. It's weird because it's there.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like, looking back, all the pieces are there. I mean, it is a little far-fetched, I guess, that Spock's body is regenerated on the Genesis planet, just as a result of Genesis working. But
I guess that's true. I guess just because they sent his body there wouldn't necessarily mean that he would have been regenerated.
yeah.
And it's crazy that Khan is still alive.
Oh, I know. That's pure willpower.
But it's cool because he gets to come back and have some of Montalban's best performance, really.
Yeah.
I stab at thee and all that. Yeah, this never gets old.
Yeah. Yeah, it never does.
It's still great. Now, I haven't complained about very much because I don't have a lot of complaints about this movie, but I will say it's a little contrived getting Spock into that chamber.
Yeah, with the radiation.
Why didn't he put on a radiation suit?
Yeah, of some kind.
Why?
Surely it would be close at hand in a closet somewhere. You could slip it on.
I guess the idea is supposed to be that he didn't have time.
Yeah, well, they only had 3 minutes, but it doesn't seem like it takes very long to do that.
All he had to do was block it. That still looks fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
When that explodes and it flies off. Anyway.
Yeah, and if it took Spock a while to come down from the bridge, couldn't someone from engineering have done it?
That's what I don't get. Is he was like I've got to go down. I guess he wanted to sacrifice himself, so that's why he didn't have anybody else do it. But you would only sacrifice yourself if it was impossible for anyone else to do it.
Yeah.
With the like if somebody could safely do it.
Yeah, and I want that jacket that
I
Carol
might have
Marcus is wearing.
Bought it a little more had they known that much radiation, there was no way, even if you put on a suit, that it would work. And so he just pushes everybody out of the way. Just I'm gonna do this.
Yeah, possibly, but I don't know. No, that wasn't really said.
No, you're absolutely right. It's I'm totally extrapolating, and it's not in the movie. So about Carol Marcus wearing that jacket's kind of cool.
Yeah, I definitely want that jacket.
we got to get you one.
And I like how Kirk notices that Spock's not there, so he races down.
But yeah, I mean, look at all these people that are down here.
Yeah. Surely one of them has a radiation suit.
Kind of look like they're wearing radiation suits. It's hard to talk over the scene. No.
I know.
Yeah, this always plays well. You know,
Yeah.
It's hard not to kind of lose yourself in because there's a lot of, and we didn't talk about much of it, but there's a lot of great Kirk and Spock in this. And if you've never watched any Star Trek, you care about this relationship.
Yeah.
You like these guys. This was the first thing I showed to Dan. Dan was a little bit interested in Star Trek because I talked about it all the time, and he was like, what should I watch? And I sent him Wrath of Khan, or I had him sit down and watch Wrath of Khan, and he had not watched any other Star Trek whatsoever,
Wow.
and he just fell in love with it. And then he started binge watching TOS.
Yeah. Well, I think
I'm starting to tell
it'd be
people,
hard not to watch more Star Trek after
watch
watching
Wrath of
this.
Khan first. I mean, you do have maybe the risk of nothing ever comes up to Wrath of Khan.
That's true.
So you just keep watching inferior things. I don't want to say that all of TOS is inferior to Wrath of Khan. They're very different things to a degree. It's still Star Trek. And I think, I say that, but then also, this is the most original series of the movies, just in terms of getting all the characterizations right. I mean, I love that Nicholas Meyer has a good handle on the triad and keeping the three together. And when they have that big briefing, it's these three guys.
Yeah, and they really play off each other like they did in the original series.
Yeah, and it's important that McCoy has a part to play in this scene.
Yeah.
It's not just Kirk and Spock. Spock just mind melded with him and gave him his memories or his Katra, which we find out later. He got this thing called a Katra, and it's a soul and whatever. But anyway.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Spock just said that he had never taken the Kobayashi Maru test until now, and I didn't realize that he wouldn't have had to take that to get through Starfleet.
Yeah, weird. Why didn't he have to take it? Huh. As much as I didn't care for some of the stuff they did with the Kobayashi Maru in the reboot, and I don't want to give it too much credit, but I wonder if that's not why they had him be the originator of the test.
Yeah.
Because if he actually created the test, that would have made sense. Now, I don't think that could have happened in this continuity.
Yeah.
Well, it could have. Spock is probably older than Kirk.
Oh, he is. Don't know. I don't remember quite by how much, but he's certainly older.
Yeah, well, we know that by TNG, Sarek is 200.
Yes.
So, Spock is probably in his 60s here.
I could see that.
50s or 60s.
Yeah.
He's probably not much younger than that.
Yeah, so maybe...
So he might be double Kirk's age.
You could see the test being made sometime between Spock and Kirk, even if it didn't originate with Spock.
Yeah. But all I'm saying is if Spock actually made the test like he did in Abrams' film, then he wouldn't have had to take it.
Yeah.
Because he would already know it.
Except that
or maybe
he would have designed it, and so he would have sat through it at least, right?
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily negate that line.
Yeah, that's true.
I like Kirk's eulogy. I think Shatner's performance is a little hammy toward the end. Mm-hmm. When he says the word human, it's a little funky, just the way he says it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people love this performance, and it's like totally wrong of me to say anything about it. It is a great performance. Just the way he says it is weird. The way his mouth curls up when he's in a human. I don't know about it.
Yeah.
I get what he's doing. He's trying to look like he's choking up, and that is the closest to crying you will ever see Kirk get.
Yeah.
And he's trying to hold it in. He's trying to have a brave face and be Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
And that's hard because we got Spock dead.
Yeah. What do you think of Scotty playing the bagpipes?
I was like that.
Yeah.
Because it's unusual. It's not what I would have expected.
Yeah.
Hearing Scotty play Amazing Grace, you've got to wonder if any of like the Judeo-Christian religion survived, or if that's just a song people know. That is just played at funerals. You know what I mean? Because you do get the sense sometimes in Star Trek that like people have sort of moved beyond religion.
Yeah. Although I would think
Because your Roddenberry was really
yeah.
atheist.
I think you get that more in TNG though.
You do. But yeah. But it's never really mentioned either.
Yeah.
Or at least not that I can recall. I guess all I'm saying is nobody outright comes out and is a Christian.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
All these little attention to details, or I guess attentions to detail. The broken glasses and what book is he reading?
Tale of Two Cities. Best of Times was the worst of times.
Yep. Oh, that's right. I remember that. I tried to sit down and read that once.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's hard to get through.
I never did try to read it.
Or at least it was for me. I haven't finished it. I need to.
I'm just not a big fan of Dickens.
Yeah, he's just really long-winded.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Dickens either. Dickens is one of those authors where, like, you read a plot synopsis and you see all the different intricate things he's doing, and you're like, oh, that's fascinating. And then you actually read it, and it's like, oh. Well, Moby Dick's that way, too, honestly, but...
Yeah. Although I do prefer Melville to Dickens, I have to say.
Really?
I preferred...
Even with the millions of pages about whaling and things?
Yeah, well, I got through 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Verne.
Oh, yeah, that does that, too.
Yeah.
Verne,
yeah, Jules Verne.
Jules is the one of those words that's plural. No, I'm kidding. But yes, I mean, his best friends just died, and then things are a little better because he makes a connection with his son.
Yeah.
And it's cool because his past comes back to haunt him, but then the one good thing that comes out of the mistakes he didn't realize he made is this relationship.
Yeah.
Which is kind of why I'm not entirely sure how I feel about where it goes in 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where they
you would have
kill
liked
him off that
to have
fast.
yeah, and I mean, I guess the whole idea is it gives Kirk more of a reason to hate the Klingons, but
yeah, but I never
or to
really
hate a Klingon.
liked that angle all that much anyway.
Yeah, I know you don't. I know you don't. Kirk never trusted the Klingons.
No,
he doesn't need him to kill his son.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what a bittersweet ending.
Yeah.
It's all incredibly human, which is the point. I don't know if it's at the end of this movie or where, but you get some of these movies, say the human, it's the human journey or I forget, but that was always the point of these.
Yeah.
Especially this one.
Yeah. Yeah, and he gets his relationship with Spock is ended, but he opens up a new relationship with his son.
That's funny. He even says, if Genesis is life from death, I must return to this place again.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really setting that up, man.
Yeah.
But they still could have gotten away with not resurrecting him if they decided not to.
Yeah.
So it's an out.
Yeah.
But I think it's more of an out to keep him dead.
Yeah.
If they decided they wanted to. I think that's why Search for Spock was such a difficult movie to make, because it's so evident watching this how you'd get him back, that how do you make watching that happen, a ride, an enjoyable journey to go on.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like Wrath of Khan works so well on its own.
Yeah.
It's almost a better movie if Spock doesn't come back.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is,
Yeah.
on its own.
Yeah.
That's nothing against Search for Spock. I mean, I wouldn't,
No, I'm sure glad Spock did come back.
I'm not saying I
but...
wanted Spock not to come back. There's some great Spock after that, certainly.
Yeah. And I would say that of all of Kirk's ending lines at the end of these movies, I think this is my favorite one, where he says, "I feel young."
They always had a tough time deciding what to have Kirk say at the end of some of these.
Yeah. This one ties into the theme really well.
Yes.
And you have new life, you have hope after all this
That's
really
right.
rough stuff that he's been through,
Yeah.
all this death and destruction. and it really ties in well, I think.
And, we were talking about how the ship and the way they run it is so nautical. The way they bury their dead is that way, too.
Yeah.
Or not bury their dead, but,
yeah.
Shoot them off in
Instead
space.
of carrying them off in space, or at sea, casting them off at sea, you cast them off in space.
I guess we're supposed to assume that he shot that missile onto the planet on purpose.
Yeah.
It's odd how they're spinning that spatial field.
See,
there.
they like to spin things.
Yeah, wow, they really do. Why did we do that?
They're turning the ship around so they could go off in a new direction, I would imagine.
It's really nice that they closed with the speech.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, with the old opening TOS speech, because you didn't get it in motion picture,
Yeah.
and it had been so long since we'd heard it. But it's also neat for the movie because it reminds us why they're out there in the first place, and
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing that because we do a big revenge plot, the movie's not really about exploration. I mean, that's the backdrop.
Yeah.
I mean, that's obviously, why they're out there in the first place, and there's a little bit of discussion about that. I mean, the whole growing old motif, it's, what was fun about doing this was being young and going to see what was out there, and now that I'm an admiral, and now that I'm getting older, and people are buying me reading glasses because I'm allergic to Retinox 5, or 9, or whatever it was,
Yeah.
that I can't really gallivant across the galaxy like I used to, and it's just really interesting that you had to age these characters before you got one of the most thought-provoking stories from them.
Yeah.
That makes sense because we're all human. It's something we all have to go through, and making a story about how people are still relevant even when they get older is always a good idea.
Yeah.
And it's very important to
And
appreciate
it's something that
aging in old people.
everyone will have to go through at some point or another.
Yeah.
So everyone can appreciate that kind of a story.
We live in a society where people like to ignore old people.
Yeah.
And you're going to be old too one of these days.
Yeah.
And are you going to want to be ignored when you get to when you get up to your 50s and then your 60s and then your 70s, do you want to feel like you're no longer relevant?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's really thoughtful that this big budget Star Trek movie is about that.
Yeah. And I do think it just comes naturally because all the actors are getting older. Everybody who's created this show is older. I mean,
It's an opportunity they took.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think they definitely went the right direction in going that way.
And that's an idea that to varying degrees of success continues and reverberates throughout the rest of the films.
Mm-hmm.
Again, to varying degrees of success. They even tried it with Picard and Generations, and it didn't quite work.
Yeah.
It's just weird to me that after so many years of being totally comfortable with not having a family or whatever, Picard is suddenly like, I've got more years behind me than ahead of me, and I can't, and I'm probably never going to have children now. I don't think Kirk was ever really concerned about having children and passing on a legacy. Although it's funny we didn't even talk about that. It's like, that's so cool. He's worried about getting old and not being relevant anymore, and then suddenly he's got a legacy.
Yeah.
In his son.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to break down in the next movie, but
yeah.
But yeah.
There's that possibility in
this
one.
The thing with Picard's kind of weird.
I think that part of the problem with the thing with Picard playing up his age is that he was always old in the show. We never saw a young Picard.
Yeah, from the first episode, he's got more years behind him than he does ahead of him.
Yeah.
From Farpoint.
Yeah.
Which by Generations was 7 years earlier.
Yeah, so that's something that's, in some places played up through the series itself, and so we don't really need to get
absolutely right.
a whole movie about it, because it seems more like, at that point, he's just dwelling on it in a way that he never did it during the series when he had all these opportunities.
We didn't talk about the soundtrack either, which is a brilliant soundtrack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a very nice, very, very much fits with the scenes.
It's a little militaristic.
Yeah.
In places, which is great for what it's doing thematically,
mm-hmm.
and it's got this very March kind of thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even in the main theme that we're hearing here, it has that. But then it's got that sense of wonder because it's in space.
Yeah.
And it's not just a general sense of wonder because it's supposed to be a thing about exploration, but we're not actually exploring, so it's so we're losing that. There's this wonderful sense of wonder with the Genesis device.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, like it's funny because the Genesis device creates these wonderful, awe-inspiring places, and yet we've got to question if we're playing God and if that's okay.
Yeah, is this really worth doing, or is it too dangerous for us to be doing it all?
And it's also cool that we've got all that, but it's not any kind of. It's not like a Frankenstein monster either. We're exploring the dangers of technological advancement without doing the same thing we've seen 1,000 times.
Yeah, and the one test that we see that Khan sets off, it actually works. It works beautifully, but does that make it an ethical thing to do?
Well, and we've already seen the effects of the terraforming underneath the planet earlier in the film, which we didn't even talk about, but that's a beautiful map painting.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah, we finally did it. We finally got through Wrath of Khan.
We did, finally. I love that movie.
It was a lot of fun. That was, once again, one of the toughest experiences I had, not just sitting here watching the movie.
Me too.
I'm sitting here like, oh man, I gotta talk about and analyze this movie. I just want to watch it.
Yeah, I may have to stick this in next week just to
so
see
you can
it.
sit back and watch it.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, thanks as always for listening to Geeks Not Nerds, the podcast. Really hope you enjoyed it. Sarah, thanks for joining me. It's been a long time since we've done one of these. And Sarah and I have plans to go through all the Trek movies. We did Motion Picture months ago. Hopefully it will not be months between this and Search for Spock, especially because they're such connected films, and we want to have this fresh in our minds when we talk about Wrath of Khan. So we'll try to do that for you within the next month or two.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And Sarah and I will see you later on this week, actually with another podcast, but not a commentary. We'll be doing a full spoiler podcast of Star Trek Into Darkness, which we're going to see later on this week when it opens, and that'll be really interesting. So I'm going to do a non-spoiler review for you with Brandon, and then Sarah and I are going to come in and do a full-blown, probably hour-long podcast on it.
Yep, and we'll see what the new movie looks like.
And how much, importantly, this movie has to do with it, because there are a lot of things we know already that it's borrowing from it, and we'll see if it goes even farther. So that's a lot of the reason we wanted to go ahead and watch Wrath of Khan before that. So, well, thanks again for listening. I'm Captain Logan,
and I'm Sarah,
and we'll see you later on this week.